I had a couple of Montlake contracts, and I remember the traditional authors or publishers looking, kind of basically looking down on the whole thing and saying, you're still not considered as a trad author because of this. And then I went on and I was trying to sell a book to New York, and I was at the phase in my life and our family life where it was I basically had to start earning some money. I'd been at this for a long time and I needed to make it uh, into a viable career. So I had a book out. I'd been working with an agent on this book, and she had sent it out to New York, and I had waited months and months and months. And finally, I got it edited myself, and I was ready to publish it myself. And suddenly, I had these bites from New York. And so I said, I'm going to have to self-publish this. I'm sorry, I'm taking it away. I'm going to do this. Otherwise, would have to go find a real job. so I so that's what I did. So I took the leap and self-published it, and yeah, the rest is history. But it was a big leap. It was a big leap.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Kaya Carrington-Russell, an Amazon top 25 best-selling author known for kick-butt heroines, delicious men, and dark romantic worlds. And I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking to a New York Times, USA Today best-selling author who's known for writing gritty, sexy, romantic FBI thrillers. We are talking to the one and only Toni Anderson. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm much better now that you're on. I love how humble you are, is firstly what I'm going to say, because when I asked you to come on, you're like, I don't know what I have to share. And I can tell you right now, you have so much to share because from an outside perspective, and success is different in all forms to everyone, but you have been smashing goals and you've been doing really well in the publishing industry. So I'd love to explore your journey up until this point. So take me back to the start. What even had you tempted to write a book in the first place, and how did you find publishing for the first time?
Well, it was way back in the 1990s, and I was a postdoc in Canada. So from the UK originally, but I was on my second postdoc in Waterloo, which is in Ontario. And I don't know where I suddenly, but I don't know what I was doing in my time. Maybe I wasn't working hard enough at my science, but I basically read the entire library, the local library, where I had discovered romance in its most amazing form of Nora Roberts and Suzanne Brockman and Karen Robards and all these amazing authors, which I just hadn't had access to in the UK. And I basically read the entire library dry. I'd read every book and ran out. And this was probably in 1997-ish. And so I suddenly thought, well, maybe I could write a book myself in my spare time. And so that's when I started. And and then I was traveling, and then moved back to Scotland, had my two children, and kind of got really told my husband that at that point that I wanted to write rather than pursue science, which of course was a bit of a shock to him, having met when we were doing our PhDs. And but then we were also traveling between Scotland and Australia at that time, so it made it a little bit easier because he didn't want to leave me behind, and I couldn't really get a job saying, well, I'll be back in 6 months because I'm going to Brisbane. So it worked out really well. And then he got a job in Canada. So he followed me to Ontario, and then I followed him to Manitoba. And again, I carried on. I just told him that I really kind of wanted to pursue this for as long as possible. And it took a long time for me to, it took me 5 years to write the first book. And then I kind of got into a small press. So that was way back in 2004, 2005-ish, with a small press, and went from there. Basically, they then folded. And I continued on with always writing, trying to write for Harlequin originally and failing miserably, and then just writing my own stuff. And I think where I really found success was when I just started to write what I wanted to write and ignored a little bit of not the industry norms, but took them a little bit further at the time than other people were taking them because, having a killer, one of my most successful books has the hero is actually an assassin. So technically he is a serial killer, even though, we, of course, because we identify with him, we don't think of him as a serial killer, but he is. So that was kind of a little bit pushing. It wasn't dark romance, but maybe it was the start of the whole desire, at that time, just feeding off that.
100%. And I think there's a natural curiosity as well, especially when it comes into the thrillers, like as a genre. And I must confess, I am not hugely educated on the genre, which is why I'm so excited to have you on here, is that there is that curiosity about how those minds work as well. And I'm kind of curious as to how you go with writing it. Like, are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? How do you figure your characters are out bit by bit and figure out those nuggets along the way?
I used to think, and I used to be much more of a plotter than I am now. I used to plot probably the first half of the book and then knew where my next turning point was and then knew where the black moment was, plotting to the end. And I used to do a lot more character development, but I think maybe it's just experience. But now I call myself a plotster because I have the basic outline in my head. I normally, not always, but I normally kind of know where we're going to end up. I know who the main characters are. A lot of the main characters have already been introduced in terms of the heroes more than the heroines because it's a pretty male dominated world that I'm writing at the moment. So I have these characters and I have some of the backstory has already kind of been written in. And even if I haven't got an idea of the future book, I like to give myself enough room and wiggle room that hopefully they're interesting characters, but I can change or I can adapt them to what I need.
We'll delve more into the writing. I do want to continue focusing on your journey because, it's the industry has changed so much over time. And I'm kind of curious as to when you actually felt like the moment for you was that I'm a real author, because we go through so much imposter syndrome. So when was the snowball effect momentum for you and you were like, oh my goodness, there's a demand for my book. I'm a real author. When was that moment for you?
I don't know. It was late. I'd probably, like I said, it took me 5 years to write the first book, and then it probably took me 10 years really to see any success as a writer. I've been kind of one of those people who somehow, whenever I did something, it was immediately kind of changed by the industry so that they didn't like that anymore. So when I was a small press author, I was allowed to, go into RWAs, be accepted into their PAN program. So I was allowed into PAN. And then they immediately the next year stopped small press authors being able to join without fulfilling certain standards within that. And the same, so there's been a lot of that throughout my career, which I think always makes writers feel a little bit like that you don't really belong. And I think that is a constant struggle for many, many writers, feeling that they don't really belong, especially when we are very solitary and we work in our caves and we. So when did I think I actually made it? I probably when my Cold Justice series started taking off, which probably after about book 3 or 4. So that would be 2015-ish, after starting in the early 2000s.
And then even with that, around that period was when independently publishing started coming through. So, for example, I started publishing in 2014. And I believe it was about 2012, 2013. It started becoming a lot more apparent. And just like you were saying, there was definitely a lot of conversations around if you're not a traditionally published author, then you're not professional, or you're not this, or you're not that. There was stigmatization around that. And, there's been so many shifts in the industry with that. And so what I love about this too is it has shown, as you were saying, you would do something, then it would change, and then it would change. You really have to be gung-ho in this industry because it's constantly changing. What were some of the biggest shifts that you had to go through for your career just to persevere through that you were kind of surprised by that had shifted in the industry and now it was the new normal, it wasn't the new norm?
I think the advent of the Kindle was the big same for me as it was for you. The big moment in time. I had a couple of Montlake contracts, and I remember the traditional authors or publishers looking, kind of basically looking down on the whole thing and saying, you're still not considered as a trad author because of this. And then I went on and I was trying to sell a book to New York. And I was at the phase in my life and our family life where it was, I basically had to start earning some money. I'd been at this for a long time and I needed to make it uh, into a viable career. So I had a book out. I'd been working with an agent on this book, and she had sent it out to New York, and I had waited months and months and months. And finally, I got it edited myself, and I was ready to publish it myself. And suddenly, I had these bites from New York, and my agent got very excited, but not told me not to get too excited because, even though I had 5 books with publishers at this point, I still wasn't considered a truly published author. And then she kind of told me what I could expect as an advance from this. And I was just like, well, I can't live on that. And so I said, I'm going to have to self-publish this. I'm sorry, I'm taking it away. I'm going to do this. Otherwise, would have to go find a real job. so that's what I did. So I took the leap and self-published it. And yeah, the rest is history. But it was a big leap. It was a big leap.
Definitely scary as well because this is definitely not a career that you can really control the outcome of. You don't know how releases are going to go. You don't know how they're going to be received. There's so many risks involved. But I think that risk of taking that first step and deciding to back yourself up is one of the biggest but most monumental ones as well. And I'm kind of curious, when was that moment of relief perhaps for you when you thought, oh, I made the right decision. Like I have arrived. I'm where I want to be. How many books through or how many years later was that? Or was it on that release?
Probably that year, because that year 2014, that year I did get 3 books because I had waited so long for New York to reply. I had written another book already, so I had 2 ready to go that were connected. So I had 2 ready to go, and then I was able to write a third one. So, and I always think that 3 books in a series is when readers actually start to pay attention to the series. That, in my experience, yeah, it was probably 2014 when I realized that I could make a go of it, and that I could finally make enough money for me to be able to keep writing, and that was lovely. And yeah, that was a big relief. But I think for any writers, there's no guarantee. I think that's the big problem. Well, problem, it is what it is, but there's no guarantee of the same income next year as what you have this year. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster, and that can be exciting and fun too. But I know that for some people it can be really demoralizing and difficult. So.
What are some of the conversations that you had to have with yourself just to, like, was it the fact that you are living the dream, you are a full-time author, and that was enough for you to be okay and accept the beast that is self-publishing as well, as you said, with the highs and the lows? Or were there other conversations you had to navigate around yourself?
I was fine. I think the thing about me is I'm a little bit of a control freak. And I think a lot of indie authors are control freaks. So even though there's the roller coaster, I guess if I'm driving, so to a degree, it's easier than some other publishing venues for certain people. Everything I say is obviously, depends on the person. It's different for everybody. So I wouldn't like to say that my journey is the same as everybody else's or more worthy or less worthy or anything, but just that being in control for me was a big deal, and so I loved it. I really, I'm happy. I'm a slow writer, so a lot of the because I'm a slow writer and because I know I'm a slow writer. I accepted very early on that I could only publish 1 or 2 books a year, and so I never followed the fast publishing train. I couldn't have done it even if I'd tried. So it wasn't an option for me. So I just literally, I stuck in my lane. I chose to write very similar with it, kept it in the same world. So the books are similar in that they are romantic thrillers and suspense. So I think it helped grow my brand, I guess, so that readers knew what to expect and they knew when to expect it.
I think that focus is important as well, though. As you said, I definitely think comparison can be the thief of joy. And you knew straight away a rapid release schedule or really pushing it is not what's best for me. And I'm really, it actually brings me so much joy when I hear authors say that, because I know there's so many authors who have tried to go against their natural process. And it's just made them really exhausted and really disappointed.
Oh
So
yeah.
the fact that you could accept that early on and say, this is what I do and this is how I do it. But your books are no small feat either. Your recent release, Cold Truth, which we'll delve into shortly, was 138,000 words. You standardly write books that are 120,000 words. And I also imagine there's just so much more mental capacity, I want to say, for when you are writing thrillers and you are writing suspense and those twists and those turns. I imagine it's kind of like a great big puzzle, really, and you're trying to piece all the things together. Is that correct? What advice would you have for authors who are wanting to delve down thriller romance, or romantic thriller, should I say? What advice do you have?
I would start by definitely reading a lot of that genre. Um, and then there's my advice always comes from other people, really. So when I was writing or trying to write for Harlequin, they always said that the romantic thrillers should be where you can't take the romance out without kind of destroying the thriller, and you can't take that, they mesh together. They have to mesh together in a way that makes sense. But the romance isn't just like an add-in. It's not just dating on the side when you're solving a murder or something. So I think that's maybe the one main thing is just to make sure that your characters are entwined with the story, enmeshed in the story, and not every book's the same, and definitely it takes a lot of mental energy to write them. I find myself as I'm working, I will suddenly have a plot point or a piece of evidence so that I suddenly have to deal with, and I I can't just pretend it doesn't exist. I have to, and then I have to figure out how the police or the FBI or whatever law enforcement would be involved, how they would deal with it. And sometimes I try and follow what they would do, but also sometimes writers are able to build themselves escape routes, shoot sometimes. Something's lost or that doesn't work, or, this feed was scrambled, so there's no camera. Uh, Things like that. But it's complicated. But at the same time, I found I did try again when I tried to write for Harlequin all those years ago. I tried to write some straight contemporary romances, and I found it so difficult because there was no external driving forces. That I find that very difficult when it's all emotional. Anyway, I'm terrible. I'd be obviously a terrible contemporary romance writer.
But it's interesting because obviously that is you as a writer. That is what you're passionate about. That's what tickles the brain, so to speak. And I actually really love that, because I know there would be so many people who find that difficult to have those mystery or suspense elements. I really think it's kind of in the way of like our personal curiosity as well as writers too. So I kind of love that you tried contemporary romance and thought, there's not enough murder in this for me. There's not.
I kept killing people. Oh, there's a dead body. Oh no.
What does your do you what does your routine look like? Are you working 9 till 5? Are you doing 4 hours of admin and 4 hours of writing, or are you just going with the flow and deciding what serves you best that day? What is your process?
I tend to get to my keyboard around 8:30 in the morning, and then the dogs stop me at 9 to feed them. But so I'll check my email first thing, and I then normally have a word count that Pacemaker or Scrivener has told me that I need to make to hit my deadline, and that's what I try to get into. I try to work, but I've been a bit bad. I think it's not long since I did finish my book, which is currently with my copy editor, my poor copy editor, no, proofreader, poor proofreader. They have to read all those words during this time of waiting for the edits to come back. I find it hard to really get into another story. I am currently working actually on two different projects, which I never ever do. I never work on two books at the same time. But I figured if I started working on them now and let my brain do a little bit of plotting, and when the proofs come back, I will at least have had made a start on them. So yeah, but I basically sit at my desk all day. But now that the kids are grown up, I do tend to stop around 5-ish when my husband comes home and we kind of have a normal evening together. So it's kind of weird to go from working crazy all every day and every evening and every weekend to kind of having almost a normal routine, which is kind of nice.
I'm kind of curious, and when did you start slowing down that pace? Because I think there is such a long period where the hustle, the hustle culture is real. Like you want to move the needle as much as you can. You want to just create as much hype around every release. You want to remain relevant on the market. There's just so much pressure, especially when, as we said, the income can be up and down. So when did you actually decide to put yourself first and slow down that pace? Is that only recent or is that a couple of years ago?
It's a couple of years ago. I think when did it start? Probably just, I'm thinking post pandemic, probably my kids left, which is kind of a bit sad that when they left, I slowed down. But I feel like it was that kind of era that, and I think what catalyzed it basically was that the knowledge that you do have to look after yourself. And I went through a phase where I had an undiagnosed dairy allergy. And so I was very sore and stiff for several years with extreme inflammation. And I tried working out to try and get rid of this stiffness because I felt very old and got to get to the gym. And it just made everything 1,000 times worse. And then when I finally figured it out, I was able to give up dairy and to get back to feeling, great, like a normal person again, pain free. And I think that is also kind of a bit of a message to your body to remember to take care of it. And so I do try, and also it's if I can get my word count in the day, I normally can. And it's different. It's slightly different when you're near the end of a book, when you're kind of racing and you're the momentum's there, and you try and you work harder, more efficiently, and maybe that's it. And everything else falls on the wayside. The whole business of running the author business, like, oh, I'll do that next week. Yeah, so I think it was a couple of years ago, but also I am, in my 56 now, and I think I have to not, I have to prepare myself to actually figure out how I'm going to carry on doing this, because I'd like to carry on doing this for a long time, but in a sustainable way. So
That's amazing. And I absolutely love that you took that time for yourself as well because it's so important. I'm only realizing in recent years probably how important it truly is. And so I always want to have that discussion on here because unfortunately there's so many phenomenal writers that I've seen drop off over the years because they've just gone so hard that it just stopped them in their tracks and they couldn't go anymore. And I think it's probably killed a lot of like amazing dreams, but incredible stories that could have been told had it been at a slower pace. Speaking of incredible stories, let's talk about Cold Truth. So Cold Truth comes out on June 23rd, so we're not too far off now. What was there something different about writing this particular book, or tell us a little bit about it?
yeah, there was quite a lot different about writing this book because and every time I speak about it, it's a spoiler in some ways. So I be careful to a degree, and try not to upset people. Somebody on my group got upset recently, and I was thinking, well, if you read the blurb, you're going to be just as upset. But they weren't. Somebody else had posted something, and they hadn't realised it. There was a moment, but it's a story about a character, and this character. I'm going to spoil this now. I am going to do some
I love
spoilery things.
spoilers.
This character is assumed dead. He dies in book one of Most Wanted, Cold Justice Most Wanted series, which it's this is Cold Truth is book 6. So in book one, we hear he dies in an air crash, and so for the whole other books, and the books actually happen within 1 or 2 weeks of each other. So they're these because I keep a very detailed timeline. We're actually the book starts on I think January 1st, and we are this book 6 is the kind of well it starts also starts on January, so they're very closely packed together. And I do think that's kind of one of my little secrets when it comes to writing series is to keep the timeline really tight, because for me, even though it's taken me all these years to write the books, when you're reading them, I hope it creates a little bit of pace within the series. So this poor character is assumed dead in book one, and we talk about it. And the other characters, all they're all very close to him, and they all miss him. And then finally, we get to his book in book six, and it starts with him before the flight, and then the question is, does he or doesn't he get on the flight? Well, if it would be a very short book if he gets on the flight. So, and then there's another character. So I don't normally write age gap romances, but it just was how this story came, fitted together. And so there is an age gap. So she is 27. She's a 27-year-old British librarian, and I decided to put her from my hometown. So it's for me, it's very cool. I get to revisit all these, really loved spots in the UK, in Shropshire. And the book takes place for a large part in Zimbabwe. And I was very lucky to visit Zimbabwe in 2016 with a family. And I was able to then use a lot of those experiences, because I had this air crash did happen in Africa. So it's like, he's in Africa. So I was able to use that experience. And so all my own personal journeys across Zimbabwe, which is an amazing country, and a lot of fun, but also, it has its own issues too. So, and yes, so that's where it starts. And yes, it's their journey, basically.
Love that. I am so curious as to how you keep track of your detailed timeline because I'm terrible at it. But so many authors struggle with it, especially when it is over numerous books as well. So what is the system that you found has worked for you to make sure that you're critically keeping account of when, who, what, where, how?
I have a program called Aeon, so Aeon, and it is a detailed timeline tracker. And I try to, as I'm writing, I will try to remember to insert the scene that I've written, or key moments within the book, into this program. And I'm probably thinking that I probably haven't finished doing that for the last book, but it means I'm able to look at all the books, just in a kind of in a timeline, up against each other. And I've got the characters in there too, so I'm able to see if certain people can't do certain things. So writing that book, I realized that, because of the overlap, some of my side characters couldn't be there. So I had to use different side characters because they were involved in the other books in different places. So I had to know where everybody was. It was pretty complicated. It was pretty complicated. If somebody tells me I've done it wrong, I will be, well, they can tell me, but I would be surprised if they're right, because I have it literally in a program. So maybe I've explained it wrong in the book, but it should be correct, even though if it seems it can't be possible.
I love that. I actually might look into that program myself. So thank you.
You're welcome.
One thing that I was deeply in awe of in the best way is, and I just thought it looked so magical from an outside, and again, success is different for everyone, but the amount of accolades, the amount of awards, the amount of nominations that you have had is just so phenomenal. And I imagine so rewarding as a writer to be like, okay, like I'm doing okay, like I'm doing really well in my craft. I'm kind of curious if there was one that was like a little bit more sentimental for you, that once you received that or you hit that mark, you were like, this is it. This is what it's about. I'm so glad to be here right now.
Yeah, I know that that winning any awards there's a huge degree of luck involved, and I know that some writers get a little bit despondent, but the amount of luck It is huge because you just have to find the judges have to like the book. And if you find the wrong judge, then, if they just don't happen to lock into your writing or your storytelling, then that's it. It's just one person and you're tanked. You won't get anywhere. But I winning the Daphne, I think, was probably the big one for me. So from in within RWA as was, well, I mean, it still exists, obviously, but not quite in the same form it used to. The Kiss of Deaths chapter is something I used to belong to and belonged to for many, many years and really enjoyed. I used to go on a lot of their tours at conferences and all sorts of fun stuff to, you know, fun places where you can't normally go, State Department, places like that. So, yeah, a lot of fun. So when I won that finally in, I think, 2021, and I won it again in 2023. But that was it's a really nice moment because you are, you know, from a field where there's a lot of very talented people. And I think whenever I recognize their talent, and I think that it helps me. It's not modesty exactly. I think for me, it's which, and I think people coming from, I think Australia and UK, Canada to a degree, but um, it's very, it's expected. You're supposed to be modest about everything. You're not allowed to, toot your own horn and all that. And I grew up with that a lot. So I also, being in Canada now and having the States as our closest neighbor, it's a completely different scenario where if you don't say it, and you do kind of figure this out at some point in your career, that if you don't say it for yourself, then nobody will know ever. So I think, yeah, winning the Daphne, the first time I won it, I was in a car park in Stuck. We were on a journey across country to BC, British Columbia, and which is about 2,000 kilometers, 2,500, something like that. And there was a big accident on the highway, so we were stuck in town, in this little town of Golden, I think, in BC. And there was a heat dome. We had the dogs in the car. It was just thousands of people in this tiny town. And I get this on my phone. I get this notification or text from somebody. Oh, you won! I'm like, oh, no, it's pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing. It was hard to celebrate. I think there was a Tim Hortons and I don't know, maybe a McDonald's there. So it was hard to celebrate. But usually when I win anything, I will celebrate with I buy these mini bottles of champagne now. So to make sure that I do celebrate all these milestones, like finishing the first draft or publication day and release day, I guess, and even getting it back from sending my edits off. I try to celebrate them all now because I never used to. I used to just work, 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 and then as soon as I don't know if you've ever done strengths for Becca Syme's strengths. So I'm number 2 achiever, which means that as soon as I finish the one thing, I would literally be starting the next thing, and I could finish a book, and that evening I would be planning to start plotting the next. And I was thinking, I have to stop. You've got to stop. So yes, now I will celebrate.
We need to celebrate more. This is actually something I've only recently started doing for myself as well. And I really value the importance of it because when we get in the habit of work, 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 it's not as rewarding. It's not having a moment of self-care or a moment of whether it's getting Uber Eats, whatever it may be, having that moment to go, good job, here, have some brisket. I don't know. That's what I did on my last one. It was quite enjoyable. But I am curious as well because we do talk about Becca Syme's course on here quite a bit for authors who have done it. I love discussing it because I think it's a valuable resource as well. So I'm curious what your top 5 are because your number 2 Eva is my number 1. So I actually really understand the trying to pull back the reins a bit. So what's your top 5?
And I'm number 1 learner, which explains PhD I don't use. Number 2 achiever. Number 3 is, I think, discipline, which explains the ability to sit in the chair for 10 years in a row without actually making any real money. Number 4 is the worst one. It's harmony. So I mean, it's a really tough one, I think, because this desire would. I normally explain it wrong, so I don't want to get it wrong. But for me, it's all about having needing the world to be kind of uh, just calm and everything to fit together and to be able to work and move forward with anything. And then number five is focus.
I can see where the determination definitely comes from because they're like very, very good ones. The
I
half of
do.
one must throw you off a little bit though, amongst
It
all.
does. Yes. And then empathy is number six. So harmony and empathy is my literally, oh my goodness, how are you?
After 20
But
hours.
I also think it's very good for characters. So both of those things mean that I think it helps me clue into how characters would feel more. Stops me being a machine.
How do you go with character development? Is it do you have profiles for your characters? Are you creating like a board or a document or something on your characters as you're going? And I imagine, as you said, obviously you have intertwined series, so some of those couples are there. Or are you getting more of a feel for them when you are actually writing the book that you're starting to really understand their wounds and things like that? Or do you already know those things before coming into the book?
Yes, no, I don't know them at all. So this book that I just wrote with my guy that's been dead for for five books. I was literally I had no clue what this book was gonna how I was gonna write this book, what was gonna happen until I started to write it. I also did not know if I could convince myself that the hero was really hero material because he's been kind of a gruff figure of authority in the past. So I was a little unsure if I could make him, real hero material, and I could. Apparently, I did in my head, and the people that have read the book really really like it. And one of my friends who read the book, she said the same thing. I didn't think I was going to be able to, like this guy as a hero, but it turns out that you can. So I tend to, I make my characters, I flesh them out enough for them to be real. So I have whole this the current series is on works within the world of the hostage rescue team, one of the hostage rescue teams in Quantico, and I figured out I realized what the research suggested there are two assaulter teams and there's a of seven men assaulter teams and there's one 8-person sniper team. So before I started, I was writing, then I suddenly realized I had to name everybody and I had to have an idea of what they looked like in terms of just, okay, what actor would play this person, just so that I could write scenes and the people could be real in my head. But beyond that, I didn't really know much about any of them. I sometimes seed in some sort of wound, which I know that I'm going to have to deal with later. But this character, yeah, he came to life when I started to write the book. And the heroine, she didn't exist at all. So it was I kind of worked from the plot points I had. Okay, what's the best conflict here, and what works for the story that I have set up. So I like to think it did it did work, but I don't know. You don't know until you get feedback from your loyal readers who will tell you whether or not you managed it or not. And yeah, normally quite vocally, but that's fine too. I don't mind.
I have no doubt that they've loved it. Well, Will. I'm in suspense now for you. I'm like, June 23rd, come on. I'm kind of curious as to what advice you would have for authors when it comes to the trickier side. I mean, in my opinion, it's the trickier side is the marketing, is the release day. What are the things that you put in place, whether it be ads or being on social media a lot or newsletter swaps or whatever it may be? What are the things that you put in place to try and make every book release as successful as it possibly can?
I do a little bit of everything. I don't think I do anything particularly well. I do my newsletter. Obviously, I'll do a series of newsletters running up to the release where, an excerpt and tropes and things to try and get people enthusiastic. And then I do some newsletter swaps, but I find I'm terrible at asking for other authors to read my books and give me a quote. But generally, I have a group of friends, and I will ask them, or I will reach out to a couple of new people. And I mean, authors are very kind in general. Most authors will try their very best to get you into their newsletter if they possibly can, and they are kind. I do flirt with ads, but again, I don't think I'm particularly good with them. I Yeah, so yes, I don't know. I do some Amazon ads, and I do some Facebook ads. And again, I'm at the stage where I actually need to start all these ads again because I've let them kind of die down a little bit. I I was in my writing cave for 3 months and just like things that didn't happen. I like to do Goodreads giveaways. I find that that's a way to let a lot of people know that the book exists. I also do really long pre-orders. As soon as I know, I tend to put put a year pre-order out, and then I will move it back when I know what date I'm going to be able to get the book out. So, and I think my readers know that, so they often look for it and will pre-order straight away. I find that my best ever release was actually last year, and I did all the things for that, and I had to the extreme. I'd given myself a little bit of leeway, and I had my German translation, I had my audiobook, and everything went live the same day. And so it was huge in terms of the release day. But I don't think I did anything. Oh, I did a bonus scene, and I also done a bonus scene for this book as well, where the people that pre-order the book or buy it on release day will get this bonus scene featuring these two characters that everybody wants their book, and it unfortunately it's not going to be the next book. So I thought I better write a bonus scene to keep people happy for a little while, and that will also go out. I send that to my newsletter, but I wait you know a month or so. So the people that pre-order the book hopefully have the incentive to pre-order, because we need people to buy our books as well as to provide readers with stories.
Absolutely. I have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author. So I've lit a candle, I've created ambience, but basically what it is 5 rapid questions. Are you ready?
Yes,
What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
it's probably when I was working as a fish biologist and I accidentally let all the water out of a tank of salmon. I managed to fill it back up again before any of them died, but that I think qualifies as my clumsiest moment.
Oh, that would have been so messy.
It was just a nightmare.
What are the 3 words that best describe you?
Mm, oh, gosh. 3 words. Determined. Hardworking is kind of 2 words, but and um, empathetic.
Now, this is going to be a hard one. What is the song that best describes you?
Oh, this is an easy one. This is an easy one. My favorite song is Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. So I always laugh because when I was growing up and I heard this song and I was in my little hometown, which I adore, but I also was desperate to get out of. And I heard this song from, somebody I'd never heard of before. And it was like, this is my song.
That I actually have a similar song for the same thing when I was in a small town. I used to listen to it all the time, and sometimes it'll randomly come on my playlist, and I'll be like, cool, change is coming. What, or should I say, who has been your favorite character to write and why? And you can only choose one character.
Oh, that's very hard. Very hard. Um, I think, I mean, I'm very torn between two characters, which are probably the two reader favorites. And one is my assassin, and the other is a very slightly grumpy FBI profiler. And my favorite character, right, is probably currently the Lincoln Fraser, who is my slightly grumpy. He's not very grumpy. I hate to think people think he's grumpy. Character. He's my he's an FBI agent, and he's uses his power to kind of create havoc if he wants to.
But what is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
Hmm. It's probably the fact that I can or used to paint and draw quite a lot. So, and I was at one point quite good at it, but I think now I'd be uh, pretty bad at it until. But I would love it's something I would love actually to get back into, and I'm thinking that when I retire, I'm hoping not that from I will retire from writing. I should actually say when my husband retires and our life changes a little bit. That is something I would like to make time for in the future, is to be able to do that again.
I have had so much fun having you on here. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. And I would love to know, what do we need to be on the lookout for? And most importantly, where do we find you?
Well, Cold Truth obviously it comes out in June, and after that, I have not put the pre-order up, but I will announce here for the first time, spoiler, that the next book is going to be called Cold Heat, and that is going to be on a long pre-order for next year. And I hope to move it forward. But I am also working on this other second kind of semi-secret project as well. So all within the same world. So yes, I'm hoping readers will like it. But yeah, I guess I hope I like writing it first. And I can be found on my website, all over the web, basically, toniandersonauthor.com. And I also have a shop, which I think is just toniandersonshop.com. Very original title. Yeah, and Facebook and Instagram, all the places.
Amazing. Well, everyone, make sure you check out Toni, follow her journey, pre-order the Cold Truth that comes out on June 23rd. And thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we'll see you on the next episode, guys. Bye.